This is Flashpoint, but this is also Flashpoint, and this is also Flashpoint, and this is also Flashpoint. Want to guess which one I like the most? So a few years ago, I made a video about how I'm just not a fan of the 2011 storyline by Jeff Johns entitled Flashpoint. I feel like it's overly edgy, doesn't take the opportunity to dive into Barry Allen as a character enough, and just in general was a very lousy story that just didn't work for me. And because I'm a shill for it, I also like the TV show version of the storyline more than any of the others, but come on, it's definitely not great. I mean, it's a single episode and it rushes through all of the potential that it actually had. I mean, this is a show with 2 seasons of potential with characters that we know and love, so you really could have done something more with it than the comic or the animated movie could have done. So naturally, once I learned that the 2023 feature film debut of my favorite character was going to tackle the Flashpoint storyline, I was less than excited. In fact, I thought it was going to be terrible. I mean, everything about it just looked awful. It focused too much of its time on Michael Keaton being back as Batman, and Supergirl and Ben Affleck being back was also a huge part of it. Every trailer just looked farther and farther away from what I wanted out of a Flash movie. Not to mention that the CGI was just terrible in pretty much every trailer, and any bit of leaked footage pre-release was just bafflingly ugly. When people kept coming out calling it one of the best superhero films of all time, I really thought I was falling victim to a psyop. And then my girlfriend and I sat down to watch The Flash, a movie that has since become one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, and a movie that is now my favorite DCEU movie because I liked it. Quite a bit, actually. Okay, so obviously this movie isn't very good. There's no way of getting around that. The CGI is a fucking mess. The writing is a complete joke at times. Ezra Miller is involved, so that's already a red flag. And the production of this movie is so troubled that it probably should have just been canned. But do you know what this movie is? It's a Flash movie. This might be the best adaptation of Flashpoint out there. Well, besides the fanfiction one that I wrote in 2018, but that's not something to talk about here. You know what the biggest problem with Flashpoint is? We barely get to see what leads up to it. I mean, we do in the TV show, but there's another problem because they literally spend an entire episode dedicated to Barry getting over his mom's death only for him to reverse it. But you know that this is about the movie and not season 2 of the show, which I'll talk about eventually. This movie spends 23 minutes diving into Barry's life, the people he associates with, why he makes the choice that he does, and everything that comes with that. Should it have been longer? Yeah. Should it have been an entire movie? Definitely. But it's still pretty well done as is. The first act of the movie does a terrific job at showing you just how miserable Barry is. You might assume from Zack Snyder's Justice League and even the 2017 Justice League movie that Barry is a happy enough individual, but this movie shows that's simply not the case. Barry's stuck in a job where he can't go anywhere, a boss that doesn't appreciate him at all, friends that only ridicule and chastise him, and oh, did I mention that his mother's dead and his father's in prison? That's a pretty big problem too. If I was in his position, I don't really know if I'd do anything different. I mean, these opening moments are crucial to showing why Barry makes the decision that he does. Now, I guess I should talk about the actual Flashpoint timeline now that we see, and it's fine. I think the biggest joy of the movie is seeing the 2 Barrys interact. If you find this incarnation of Barry annoying, then you're definitely not going to like this part of the movie because it's just double the Barrys that you already don't like. But I actually really like him in this movie, and I enjoy how this film flipped the normal origin story on the head. Seeing him have to teach himself how to use his powers is really neat, and it ties everything together in a super fun way. There's so many visual gags and little slapstick moments that I just love. I think they really took a cue from the TV show, specifically like season 4 onward, because there are a lot of slapstick moments in this and just goofy bits that I really like. Seeing Barry not only have to recreate his powers the traditional way that he actually got struck, but then also having himself get struck by lightning like in the comics was a really sick thing to do, and there's some great visuals that come with that. I really love how they managed to have their cake and eat it too and spin it into such a cool little thing. Batman and Supergirl are kind of just whatever, honestly, take it or leave it. They contribute enough to the movie where I don't feel like they're entirely superfluous, but I also can't say that I loved having them. Supergirl is a good enough addition just for the way that Zod is integrated, which isn't amazing, but it's something, I guess. And Batman has a character arc. It's not deep, but he has one. He wants to get back into the field and do things again, even though he feels like he can't, and he thanks the Flash for actually shoving him and giving him the opportunity to do something. Even though he dies, he feels like he was already saved by Barry. It's very generic and very played out, and it's not deep at all, but it's there, and he feels like an actual character and not just something to make people go, oh my gosh, it's Batman from the 1989 Batman movie. The third act is where this movie soars though for me. While the action is pretty bad and held back by the movie's terrible CGI, I'm a big fan of where it takes both the characters of 2023 Barry and 2013 Barry. Side note though, some of the action is pretty good. Like Barry does a little spinjitzu tornado like he's straight out of Ninjago, and as a huge Ninjago fan, I'm a pretty big fan of that, but you know, Back to where we were, which was 2013 Barry. Seeing the annoying, laughing all the time and dumb 2013 Barry slowly lose himself to his ambition to the point where he wants to destroy a universe just to keep trying to save Batman and Supergirl is really cool. And the eventual reveal that he's this twisted version of the Flash is awesome. I won't lie, I wish it lasted longer because the actual resolution of the Dark Flash storyline is pretty rushed, but I can't say that I don't find it extremely cool. I also think it's visually stunning, and I love how all the little bits of Kryptonian ships and weapons just chip away and become that Flash's armor. I think it's really, really sick. And I mean, it's a better version of Savitar from the Flash season 3 at least, so that's good. Ultimately, I'm just a really big fan of the emotional core of this film as well. It's actually a movie focused on Barry and his relationship with his mother, and even though things spiral into what they become, and I think that's awesome, the initial scene where Barry changes the timeline is just amazing. Ezra kills it in this scene. Their soft voice and delivery is so good, and I think they kill it throughout the entire movie. Honestly, they're one of the best parts, which is unfortunate because of everything that they've done, but it sucks that we'll never get to see them as the Flash again because they're honestly the highlight of the film when it comes to the acting prowess. It's pretty sad. I mean, you have someone like Ben Affleck who just sleepwalks through every line of dialogue in the film, but you know, that's par for the course for Ben Affleck's Batman in the DCU, I guess. And then I want to talk about the last scene where Barry finally resets the timeline and says goodbye to his mother because it's so good. Now, is it just a repeat of the ending of season 1 of The Flash? Sure. Is it nowhere near as good as that? Absolutely not. But I do still think that it's really, really good, and I think it's a great way to close off this movie and that everything that it meant for what was going on. I also just really like seeing how both Barrys are different. 2023 Barry is a bitter and calloused man, and his 2013 counterpart is this young, springy, and absolute child because he had a mother to baby him. But that childlike attitude and lack of regard for consequences makes total sense to turn 2013 Barry into the Dark Flash. I'm not saying this movie is the masterpiece that Tom Cruise talked about on the phone for 30 years, but I am saying that this movie satisfied me as a Flash fan. I walked away surprised at how enjoyable it was, how the emotion worked, how it actually did a decent adaptation of Flashpoint, and at the end of the day, how it handled the character of the Flash. I wish we got a better first debut movie for the Flash. I wish the CGI was better. I wish the movie wasn't as rushed and unfinished as it feels at times, but I really did get a lot out of it from an emotional perspective. It's unfortunate though that the movie did flop because with the conclusion of the Flash TV show and with Jeremy Adams stepping away from the Flash comic book, I don't know if we're going to be getting Flash content for a long time, especially not a movie. They're not going to trust the character with leading a feature film after everything that happened. My only hope is that James Gunn's new DC universe can do something to create some sort of Flash content, whether it's Barry Allen, Wally West, or even Jay Garrick. I love every incarnation of this character, and I would love to see something else with them in the future. Love it? Did you hate it? And go ahead and like this video. Subscribe for more content. I have a ton of content coming out soon. And thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next video where I review Blue Beetle. Hell yeah. Just kidding. That movie was straight garbage.